Circuit 2013 here in Lexington. My name's Sam McKee, joined by announcer extraordinaire, Mr. Gabe Pruitt. And Gabe, you have been on fire with your handicapping through the first 3 nights of the Grand Circuit. A lot of pressure on you today, though, with a bunch of trotting races to keep that going.
Well, we just hope to keep the streak going as we have so far. We've been lucky, but as you mentioned, tough card today, but a fantastic card. Lots of stakes divisions, $15,000 pick 4, of course, so we're looking forward to jumping right into the action.
And this is kind of the prep for the Kentucky Futurity next Sunday as we close out the 2013 Grand Circuit session. Don't forget, matinee cards next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the Lexington Selected Yearling Sale at Fasig-Tipton gets underway Tuesday night. First yearling in the ring there at 7 p.m. Let's get going with the first race. It's a late closer for trotters, and number 2, Blue Porsche, an absolute standout on paper, made over $400,000 as a 2-year-old major Grand Circuit stakes winner. Has been racing up in Canada with his trainer Blair Burgess driving. We go to the captain, Corey Callahan, today. I think he's a lock in the opener.
Well, that obviously, as you mentioned, on paper, lightly raced, not sure what's going on. We're actually going to try and catch up with trainer Blair Burgess back in the paddock if we can before the first race. We'll try and get as much information as we can on Blue Porsche. I'm going to try Blazed on top of him here. Another lightly raced trotter, this one from the barn of trainer Frank Antonacci. He had a tough trip there last time in Canada, Sam. He was parked every step. He picks up Scott Zeron today, and I think if he continues to improve, he could be the only one to give Blue Porsche a run for his money.
And Scotty's, he's driven him before, and he's raced in those mid to upper level conditions up on the WEG circuit, so he certainly has kept some pretty good company. Moving on to race 2, it's a late closer for Pacers. Number 4, Mindset, is a lightly raced 3-year-old for the Brittany Farms and Tony Alagna, but I thought he had just enough pop in this field where I think he's the one to beat, even though he's facing some older horses.
Well, he's going to be a short price here. No doubt he is the one to beat. I'm just going to try and take maybe a little bit better price here and go with the 6 It's a Go. The Michigan Invader, he did try one start here, and I will mention he sat in the back. He was the favorite. He was very rough gated in that start, just didn't really look like himself. I'm going to take a big look at this guy on the track today. As long as he warms up well, may take a shot on It's a Go. He should be a decent price in there.
And he just won an overnight at the Hillsdale, Michigan County Fair with no wagering there. Went coast to coast here. You know, in Michigan, you have to use a lot of grab on the shoes, a lot of Borum at Hazel Park for the most part. Down here at the Red Mile, you can almost race them without shoes if you wanted with this surface. Maybe we'll see some adjustments there, and that could make a difference for number 6, It's a Go, in race 2. Moving on to the third race, one of the biggest questions of the day. Number 2, Panther Hanover, is about 20 lengths the best in here, but he hasn't raced all year. He has 2 qualifiers under his belt. First start of the year. Obviously, he's not going to be in peak form, and he'll be raced conservatively, but I think he's still fast enough to win.
Well, an absolute wild card, as you mentioned. If he's anywhere near the top of his game, no question, he's the best there in race 3. We're going to try and catch up with Bruce Saunders, the trader back in the paddock, see what information we can gather there. I went with the 4 Special Forces. That's a 4-year-old trader Brian Brown. He's been competing at the top ranks there at Scioto. Really looks to have turned things around a bit since adding Lasix. Went with him as my top choice. Another horse that really likes this track, Sam, is the 5 Blatantly Best. Of course, he's coming out of that invitational there at Hoosier Park against the captain, but he was the Kentucky Sire Stakes runner-up a year ago here at the Red Mile. He's always performed very well on this racetrack.
And I believe he was also second in the American National and the Abe Lincoln in Chicago, and he won the Circle City as a 2-year-old, so he is a horse with a high profile for the brothers Irv and Andy Miller. Moving on to the 4th race, scratch number 2, another Amaretto. Number 3, Banco Solo, has really disappointed me this year. I thought he was going to be one of the top 3-year-olds this year, and he's 0 for 12 so far on the season after a good 2-year-old season. What do you know about the 4, Facing Justice? Hasn't raced since January, but has 3 qualifiers. Do you think he's ready?
He put together a sensational campaign there late last year in Canada for trader Kevin Thomas. You know, you would think, Sam, with 3 qualifiers that it may be all systems go here. I actually used him for second. Going to try the 5 Home Turf for trader Noel Daly on top there. This 3-year-old just making his 4th lifetime start. Tough trip last time at Pocono where he was second. He looks to continue to improve there each start. I think with any further improvement, he'll be the one to beat there in race 4, particularly with the scratch of another Amaretto.
Moving on to the 5th race, first Bluegrass Division for the 3-year-old trotting fillies. Former stablemates face off. Number 4, Shared Past, and the Kentucky Sire Stakes champ, number 7, Mosher Hall.
Really thought these two would get out of there 1-2. They both have a lot of early speed. Mosher Hall was sensational here in the Kentucky Sire Stakes. As you can see, really never an anxious moment throughout both legs and the final. Thought Shared Pass make it a perfect trip here on her back today, and with that in mind, I'm going to try Shared Pass as my top choice there in race 5.
We move on to the 6th race, another late closing trot event. This one for fillies and mares. Not that many prices on the card today. It looks pretty chalky, especially early on. I'm going to take number 6 on Common Night, and we might actually get all of the 9-2 morning line. Dwayne Miner puts up Jody Jamison. Now, Jody drove this mare at the Meadowlands in an I'm a Lula lag against those Stone Cold Killers. You know, One More Ginny and Check Me Out and Personal Style. I think this is a pretty good spot for the mare, and I think she's good enough to win, and I'm hoping that we get maybe a double-digit price.
Well, she trotted very well here in the Open, and she was not in easy that night at all. The 2012 Kentucky Futurity champ, my MVP, was in town, actually got the win that night, but Uncommon Night trotted very well to be second. I do agree with your thought process there in race 6. I believe this is the spot to maybe try and snatch a price on a card that does look maybe like we're going to have several favorites. I'm going to try the 4 Cupcake, this 3-year-old filly back there at the Meadowlands. Sam, as I'm sure you remember, on August the 2nd, she defeated the 3 Silver Credit with Ron Pierce in the bank. Just going to take a flyer here. Cupcake should be double-digit odds as well, and we may be able to get a price there in the first leg of that pick 4.
Well, we'll give you some style points there. She certainly has a shot, no question about that. 7th race, the All-Arise Trot. I guess you would say this is the elimination for next Sunday's final. The top 7 finishers make the final. Buys to Wishing Stone, Guccio, and Southwind Pepino. Savruga and Market Share are just stone cold killers, and I think maybe the way this track plays, that Market Share can track down Savruga. Added Lasix last time out at Hoosier and just lost a tough photo to Uncle Peter.
No question. Both are very talented trotters. Savruga, of course, with just huge early speed. Going to be interesting to see just how quick he does take this field down to the half this afternoon. I'm going to try a closer here in case things do get hot early with the 7, Mr. Herbie. Jody Jamison in town here. Mr. Herbie's been knocking on the door against the top level all season. Should be a bit better price. I'm just going to take a shot with him here and see if we can't get the job done for the win. As you mentioned, top 7 do come back for the final.
In a couple notes, Quick Deal goes back to the Berg Barn. They had him at the Meadowlands this winter, and he ripped off some scary miles there. If he can get off the wings okay, this horse is very fast, and he'll be a zillion to 1. And how about a little love for number 3, Arch Madness, closing in on $4 million career. And remember, he broke loose down here as a 3-year-old, finishing second to Donato Hanover in the Kentucky Futurity, and then he turned into a top trotter after that. So that's going to be a heck of a race. Top 7 make the final, and they go for the big cash next Sunday. Moving on to the 8th race, late closer for filly and mare trotters. Number 1, Dancehall Mistress, has been facing male rivals up in Canada. Look who she's chased. Intimidate, Knows Nothing, Whiskey Tax. I mean, some excellent company gets in with the fillies and mares here. I'm going to try her.
I like her as well, Sam. From the inside there, I thought Teacher could get her away very close to the early action. Another mare that has some experience in Canada is the 5 Backs of Life. I thought she trotted very well there last time in Delaware in that world record mile, of course, by Maven. I'm going to try those two, 1-2 here in the third leg of the pick 4. Really think you could probably narrow that race down to just those 2 rivals if you're shooting into that pick 4 pool.
And Jerry Duford, I believe, was one of the leading drivers at Windsor Raceway in Ontario when John Campbell first started driving, and they hook up again here with Backs of Life. Personal Style's a rallier. She won the Oaks in 2012, and she'll be flying late, too, if she minds her manners early on. We move on to the 9th race. This is the All-Arage Farm Elimination. The trick is don't finish last because the top 9 make it. You've got 5 here trained by the Bergs. Pet Rock took the bye. I am a huge fan of a rock and roll dance. This horse is just so iron tough week after week. Went 4 straight miles under 148. That's unheard of. Did all the work for Pet Rock's world record on Jug Day. Just one heck of a horse.
Well, absolutely. Just unfortunate he came up just a neck short. Pet Rock had that perfect trip on his back, but what an unbelievable mile. If someone had told you you're going to cut the mile pace 48 and 1, you would have certainly thought that
on a half-mile track. You'd think that'd do it.
You thought that would have gotten the job done. I really think that race could be narrowed down to 3. I'm going to go with Bolt to Doer, who has maybe thrown in a couple of dull efforts, particularly 2 starts back there in that Canadian Pacing Derby. He was very dull that night. Talked to Trader Pete Foley, though he thought this guy would be much better today. He really had no shot that last time at Yonkers. Got away last against Open Company. He paced his last 3 quarters like 122 and change possibly, and just he could not do it from as far back as he was. But obviously a rock and roll dance, very tough. And probably out of that 5-horse entry from Trader Ron Burke, of course, Clear Vision has just taken off recently, Sam. A winner there in that stake at Harrington last time out. and he was just beaten a nose by a rock and roll dance up there in that Canadian Pacing Derby.
And that was one of the best stretch duels of the year, right up there with the Sunshine Beach Captain Treacherous race. And then he outdueled his stablemate Foiled again. Same scenario on the Quillen. They went toe-to-toe, and he got up by about a nose in that one. We move on to the 10th race, Bluegrass Division for the 3-year-old trotting fillies. Frau Blucher off a world record is certainly the one to beat, but I remember Hand Over Bells, big rallies here last year. She was actually going to win, I think, the first week of Grand Circuit, but made a break in deep stretch, and it looked like she was going to go by to Dream On, who was razor sharp back then.
Yeah, no doubt about it. She was very good here last year. And on that same wavelength, I'm going to try another filly that was good here last year, and that's the 5 Mystery Woman. She actually won here 53 and change as a 2-year-old. She's made some breaks here and there, but shown big speed when she minds her manners. Thought with the return here to the red clay that she might be worth a shot here in race 10.
And the red clay could make the difference. She's looked a little bit off gate-wise at times and has made those breaks, but this surface is so kind for horses down here, and they sound up pretty quickly. And if she has her A game, she'll be certainly tough to beat. Dave Miller will drive her like he owns her, because he does. He's a co-owner with wife Misty. Moving on to the 11th race, first of 3 divisions for the 3-year-old trotting colts and geldings. How about this one for you? Number 4, Deadliest Catch. Ron Pierce driving for John Dewar. Love this horse. He was excellent in the Simcoe at Mohawk against You're So Vain, who's just razor sharp right now.
You're So Vain, of course, coming up in race 12. We'll talk about him in a moment. But, yeah, he has been sensational. And Deadliest Catch has not done a thing wrong. Going to be a bit of a test for class here this afternoon. I like the 5 Creatine, of course, the Hamiltonian Elimination winner. He had a tough trip there in the final. And really, besides that tough trip in the final, he has just been razor sharp recently. He was just dominant there in that Pennsylvania Sire Stakes Consolation. Great in the Colonial there, Pocono as well. Creatine, I think he takes him all the way in race 11.
And Corky's another one to watch. He's been excellent all year. Maybe didn't race quite as well as he has been in the Canadian Trotting Classic. I could see a bounce back from him as well. 12th race, we talked about You're So Vain. Came to the Meadowlands early on. They sent him down to Andy and Julie Miller, and Detour Hanover set wild fractions, and he won at a big time, 52-4. Really had a little hitch in his get-along, kind of hiking along, that sort of thing. Struggled for a bit after that, but boy, he has put it all together since going back up to Canada, and he can just flat-out motor in the final stages.
He came from an absolute impossible spot there in that Canadian Trotting Classic last time. Closed at 26-4, just mowing down ground with every stride there to Royalty for Life. Thought that was a huge effort, and obviously doesn't have a lot of early speed, but just a short field this afternoon, 7. So even if he sits last, I think if he's anywhere within striking distance, they won't be able to hold off that late rally by You're So Vain. I like him as well.
And that's an understatement when you say he doesn't have any early speed. You or I could beat him from the wire to the round barn into the first turn, I think. Moving on to the 13th race finale. I love Spider Blue Chip. Now, you got to watch him. He'll make a break from time to time at the gate, but he's got post 8 today. Ronnie can actually keep him off if he wants, keep him a little wider, keep him out of trouble. He and the 7 Master of Law will probably slug it out.
Yeah, Master of Law trainer Frank Antonacci, I know he was quoted as they really did not know what the issue was there last time in Canada, but he was just unbelievable on this track earlier this season, Sam. He won the Kentucky Sire Stakes final, 52-4, beat Lauderdale there, who's the 6 at here, and Master of Law, he just could not have looked any better. He was used very hard that night, taking the lead past demanding fractions there, the half 54 and change. Thought this was probably the deepest division of the Bluegrass Series this afternoon for the trotters. We'll mention the trainer Irv Miller liked the chances of Pine Credit. That was a trotter that enjoyed this racing surface last year as well.
Yeah, he won down here in Grand Circuit action with LaWayne Miller driving. And number 2, All Laid Out, won. Do you remember who drove him? James Rattray.
That's right, exactly.
James Rattray, second trainer for Noel Daly in the biggest win of his career, I'm sure. Gabe, always fun talking horses with you. Looking forward to your Winner's Circle interviews, your Paddock interviews. Nothing better than the matinee Grand Circuit action in Lexington, and we get underway 15 minutes from now. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and best of luck.